Hello and welcome to the Coder Kids podcast, episode number 8. My name is Jeff Ward, and I am the owner of Coder Kids, the founder, perhaps, and my great comrade James. James, I don't know what's going on with your lighting, but you look very white today.
Yeah, I
You
look
look very
I look a little
pale.
bit blue. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry,
Something about
guys.
it. This
Maybe I
is
need to get
James
more sun.
Thornock, the
That's
man
right.
himself.
Yeah. So, we've recorded the interview. We had an excellent opportunity to interview some great people, but I did want to catch up with you. So, which is why we're
Oh
recording
yeah,
this now.
yeah.
So,
Let's do a little update.
we got a construction update. Always has to come first. So, what's going on in that department?
Well, we have man, a lot of stuff going on around the house here. I bought a lawnmower.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if I told you I had an electric lawnmower,
Okay.
battery powered,
Yeah.
like a battery one, and it wasn't doing it for me. Like it just wasn't powerful enough. So
Oh
I
man.
actually boxed it back up and took it back to Home Depot. They didn't even ask a question. They didn't even look inside the box. Could have been empty. But anyway, took it back, went and got a gas mower, and now I'm in dreamland. In other news, my dad came out to Utah and helped me install like an automatic sprinkler system. So we did that outside. And then
Oh.
yeah, it's really nice because we
My
had manual
father-in-law,
valves.
yeah, my father-in-law is really trying to convince me to do that before we put our our grass in.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. But I will say, wait until it's a little cooler because that's heavy duty work down in Houston.
Oh yeah.
Um, and then the last thing is that we had someone rebuilding our master shower, and that got pretty much finished today. So we're making progress. We got the flooring as well. So for all the listeners, come on out and check out the place, but not without permission.
That's
Like at
right.
least knock on the door first.
Shoot an email,
Um,
jeff@coderkids.com.
yeah, yeah, and then come see me. James, what's going on with you, man?
Dude, I got so hyped up about Nvidia's new releases.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I lost it.
graphics cards, guys.
Yeah, so Nvidia releases graphics cards. Graphics cards, for the uninitiated, allow you to run um, complicated video games in 3D rendering. They primarily do 3D rendering, so creating 3D worlds and things like that. And the 30 series is what they call it, because all of the cards start with a 30 number. There's the 3070, the 3080, and the 3090, and all of them destroy the last generations of cards. I mean, they just walloped them, and so they didn't increase prices, but the processing speed is at least self-reported by Nvidia, uh, way beyond what they did. And so even the $500 card that you can get, which is um, the 3070, outperforms the 2080 Ti, which is kind of like the top of the line. So
Yeah,
the like their newest Toyota Corolla outperforms like the Lexus of the previous generation, right? That's kind of how to think of it. So it kind of blew
now
everybody away.
I've got a question, James.
Sure.
Is the like are video games going to keep getting more and more complex in their graphics so that you need like a bigger like a better and better and better graphics card, or like is there some point where it's like, look, the the video games are basically as complicated as they're going to get, and we don't really need, like, maybe you're hitting a max frame rate, like the highest frame rate possible, and the video game is already like super complicated in terms of graphics. I mean, is there some point where like video games and graphics cards are just going to be fully compatible and we can say like, look,
We're done.
there's really no more innovation that needs to happen in terms of the graphic card space?
Yeah, I do think that that's gonna happen. We're not close. We're definitely closer. Part of it's technology too. So there's artificial intelligence technology that's um, it's a DLSS 2 right now. It's artificial intelligence that pre-predicts where colors and images will be and stuff. And so that actually takes a lot of the load of the card away. And so there are technologies that can help that aren't necessarily physical hardware. I mean, right now, the latest cards are pushing, like, you can play on a 4K monitor at 60 frames a second with the new cards on max settings. We're talking about computer monitors that cost $1,600 right now. So
Yeah.
Beyond whatever you could need. Now that's still not the maximum. I mean, I don't see what's the point in getting beyond a 4K monitor. I think that's just silly. There are
But like
some,
in the
yeah.
future, it could be possible.
Oh, I mean, it's going to be possible, and there are 8K monitors. They exist right now,
Right.
but
Right.
they're pointless. Like, if you like, I'm sitting, so far from my computer screen. I wouldn't be able to tell a difference between a 4K and an 8K. It'd be just absolutely pointless. Now, if you
Right.
have a 70-inch TV on your wall, just like absurd, you could tell between a 4 and an 8K. But
Yeah.
nothing above 8. There'd just be no. It just becomes pointless. The human eye can only detect so many colors in such close proximity. Wow, this has gone on a tangent.
Well, anyway, so that's
I'm
James's
excited.
update.
I'm excited. The main reason I'm excited is you're gonna have to listen to the next podcast when I talk to Ultimate Immersion, but it is it's actually
Well,
gonna
tell people what ultimate immersion is basically, so that they don't think it's like some kind of weird, religious thing, or I don't know.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's Ultimate Immersion is a creator, and he simply creates assets for Minecraft that look like real life assets, like couches and chairs and tables and street signs and computers and all that. So a bit of a spoiler,
Yeah.
but we talk about it in depth in the episode. And
But you could like look up his YouTube channel, right?
oh yeah, and that's how he got relatively big, was through his YouTube channel. So definitely check him out. And then we have the podcast episode next week about it. But the thing that really requires graphical processing, what they're doing now in Minecraft and a lot of these newer games, is called ray tracing. And ray tracing takes a ton of effort from graphics cards. And it's basically how light works in the real world. And it's really easy on the eyes. Like it's not hard to look at things, and it's just beefy. It requires a lot of work. So that's a little bit of a tangent there, but that's what we're excited about. And then on the home front, we got a new washer because our old one started leaking. So that's that's it. That's how that goes.
I mean, I know that my update wasn't the most exciting either, but I'm sure everyone wanted to know about your new washer.
Now you guys know.
Now we know. All right, so let's jump into the topic for the day. As we mentioned, we interviewed previously two of our instructors, Emily and Martin. They're both pretty awesome young folks, and I guess let's just give a brief overview, just really briefly, because we'll go ahead and dive into the interview for all of our fans. But what kind of overview can we give of like Coder Kids instructors? Like what would you like to tell the world about our instructors?
Yeah, I mean, our instructors are people that are typically passionate about coding. They have good classroom management skills. They kind of light up a room. They're kind of like if you put a disco ball into any room, it's gonna like make it more interesting. And they're just like, if you were in person with them, you'd just be a happier person. And so part of about the coding knowledge is like they just are, and we talk about this in the podcast, but they're tinkerers. They're always kind of expanding their knowledge, and they love bringing kids on that journey, and showing them like what's possible that they can actually build.
Yeah, I'll never forget back when I was starting Coder Kids. um, it was just me, right? Like I was the first instructor. And then I think well, I knew that I could never grow Coder Kids without additional help.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a really hard time. I mean, even at the time that you came on with Coder Kids, I was having a really hard time like finding instructors. And honestly, it's still it can be challenging if we had more classes going on with with COVID and whatnot. It's kind of slowed us down. But
Yeah.
like if we had grown the way that we were growing, like finding great instructors is challenging. But I think we've also kind of started to figure out like what it is that we're looking for in a person. I mean, there's a lot of things from a practical like business perspective, dependability, you know, just like the abilities to communicate,
Yeah.
like responsiveness and things like that. So I mean, I think those are things that any employer would want. But then we're also adding on top of that like an additional layer of you have to know something about coding, you have to be kind of a tinkerer, you have to be the kind of person that can like inspire kids to like be interested in things that maybe they aren't initially interested in. You also have to have a lot of patience because it's a teaching job. So
Yeah.
you have to like deal with kids who are on all like levels of interest in the program, super high energy or super like not into it. Um, and so it's really I just got to say like it's a pretty complicated job, all things considered. Plus, we have equipment on top of that if they're going into schools.
Yeah.
But I guess the thing I want to say really quick about instructors is that to me, it's just a great opportunity. Like we've had a lot of instructors who have gone on to like really great jobs, and to me, I think that we are kind of taking kids who are studying, taking young people who are studying like technology topics and giving them this job where when future employers look at it, it's kind of like, oh wow, like you have taught this in schools, you have like dealt with kids in difficult situations, but it's also again relevant to their course of study. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's just different. I'm not saying it's like the best job in the entire world, but I think that
It is,
compared to
guys.
like being a host or a hostess at a restaurant or something like that, like I just think it's really great work experience. So
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty much
It's
all I
great.
have to say about that.
And
So you
and I
yeah.
just love yeah, I just one final thing about our instructors. I love hanging around them. We'll sometimes do game nights, and we did an end of summer bash. And these are just people that you want to be around. They're really smart. Some of them may or may not be smarter than me. I'm not going to disclose that. But like I just feel like enriched for being around them. And those are the kids that those are the people that you want your kids to be around too, because you want them to be able to look up to people and say, "Oh, like when I'm in college, I want to be like Miss Emily or Mr. Martin." Um, you know, Someone who's working with NASA, or someone who's tinkering with drones, who's making their own video games. To see like real people that are living like pretty interesting lives, and I think that's fascinating when they can talk to them, when they can have that dialogue, and then they can also just have fun learning coding. So I
Yep.
think that's it.
Well,
I mean, we should
yeah,
let them listen to the interview, right?
with no further ado, let's let him dive into the interview.
All right.
Enjoy. All right, welcome to our special guests, Emily and Martin, who are two of our instructors. Um,
Hello.
they've been with us for a little while now.
Oh
It's
yeah.
been well, maybe we'll let them say how long they've been with us. I don't know. Um, but super excited to kind of hear their perspectives, a little bit about Coder Kids. So, Martin, do you want to dive in really quick and talk to us a little bit about introduction and how long you've been working with the Coder Kids?
Absolutely. So hi, I'm Martin. A lot of the kids call me Mr. Martin. I've been with Coder Kids, I want to say about almost a year and a half now, 2 years I'm looking at. I've been instructing for about 3 years. And I've taught pretty much everything from like the basics of Scratch to the complexities of Python, making bots, all that kind of stuff. So that's where I'm at right now.
What are you doing in your academic studies or your personal life?
Right now, I'm majoring in computer science, hoping to get into just development. Honestly, I'm trying to look into everything. A little bit of honestly app development, game development, all that kind of stuff. Or just working for data structuring and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Right on.
wherever the good jobs are.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's what you got to study. All right.
That's right.
Emily, do you want to dive in and introduce yourself a little bit real quick?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, I'm Emily. I have been an instructor with Coder Kids for I think about 2 years now. And like Martin, I've been instructing kids for about 3 total in the coding department. I've done all sorts from the kindergarten level, just introduction to coding, all the way up to older kids starting middle school with Python, similar to Martin, like he said. I'm studying physics at UH. Doing a lot of focusing my coding abilities on doing data analysis for a lot of physics experiments and getting results out of that, which is really important to the field in the modern day. So yeah.
And Emily, we heard that I heard that you recently had an internship at NASA. Is that right?
That's correct. It wasn't technically at NASA. It was at a company that contracts with them, but I was working on the SpaceX and Boeing commercial crew programs.
Oh, cool. Well, we'll just say that it was at NASA.
Yeah.
With NASA,
Unless,
whether it was
yeah,
at
with,
NASA or
with,
not.
yeah, not
Yeah,
at
yeah.
NASA, but
That's
with
the part you write on the
NASA.
resume. That's what, like worked at
Exactly.
NASA.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Went to space.
Yeah.
Went to outer space a few times. Great guys. Well, thanks again for taking the time to talk with us. James, do you want to dive in? You got any questions?
Yeah, no, I would love to dive in. I mean, kind of first things first. These are, handpicked instructors. These are some of the best that we have, with us on the program today. And there are a couple of things that really make up a good instructor. And I think, there are a couple of things we can go into later as well, when we're talking to Emily and when we're talking to Martin. But I think coding knowledge obviously is important. If you're going to teach it, you better know it. And classroom management and that charisma. So, being able to run a classroom properly, to be able to make all the students feel included, for them to be able to have a fun time, it requires an instructor with charisma, and these two both definitely have that. And one other thing that we're going to talk about is that tinker's spirit. So it's this idea of constantly playing with code, constantly learning, kind of getting distracted by side projects. It kind of falls into that. So Martin, we're going to talk a little bit about your drone stuff, if that's okay. But I think, these are kind of the attributes. There are obviously others, but these are kind of the core ones that we like to focus on when hiring, and then also in cultivating those things, in current instructors. So anyway, so those are some principles, but I think we should probably ask the most obvious question, which is, how did y'all get into coding in the first place? How did you first learn about it, and what was your first kind of exposure? I guess we'll start with Emily.
Yeah, sure. So I guess my journey to coding was kind of an interesting one. Not really direct. I mean, I know some people kind of know, like, since they were kids that they want to do computers and they like this kind of thing, which is great, but that was not the case for me, actually. So all through high school, I was pretty convinced that I would be a journalism major. So I was super involved. Yeah, I was super involved with our student newspaper, and I was like the editor-in-chief and running the yearbook. I was very intense about it. And kind of all through my life, I was told, like, you're good at writing. You're not really so good at math and the technical side. So I thought that's what I needed to do with my life. But like my senior year of high school, I kind of realized, well, I'm good at writing. I can do it well, but do I actually like it? And the answer was not really anymore. Like, I was just kind of doing it because I thought that's the only thing I'm good at. And so I had like a crisis.
Wow.
And I said, well, I'm just going to try something completely different that I've never done before and just see how it goes. So I was like, screw it, I'll do computer science. And so I started at UH studying computer science, learned how to code, learned I was not terrible at it. I could do it. It actually was pretty interesting. I ended up changing directions and going with physics, but I realized that, computer science is a hugely important skill to have. And I'm so glad that I know how to do it. It solves so many of my problems, just being able to pick something real quick up with code. So yeah, that's kind of my journey of how I got there.
Yeah, and certainly if you're working with the space industry, then I have to imagine there's a lot of physics people do a lot of coding, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely, yeah. Because in the olden days, right, you would just do it all by hand, but because like simulations and calculations are so complicated nowadays, and like a lot of the ways physicists do their experiments is with statistics and a huge coding simulations, it's enormously important to know how to code if you're going to be going into any kind of science like that.
Yeah, and I remember hearing about like how Wall Street likes to hire like math majors and physics majors because you just, I guess you have the mindset for it, but also kind of a little bit of that coding background as well, so you can do those, like you were talking about, like high-end simulations for space, but also like for the financial industry or whatever industry. I mean, every industry is using technology now, so that's pretty great. Well, that's great.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. One, I guess this is a bit of a tangent, but it begs the question, how, you were someone that was told like you're not good at this stuff, and then you're like, I'm gonna do it anyway. Do you think like anyone can learn coding? I mean, do you think it's just you hadn't tapped into that part of yourself yet? Can you, like, what's your philosophy on that? Like, who can learn coding?
I absolutely think that anyone can do coding, like literally anyone. Like I think a large part of what held me back from succeeding in like the maths and sciences early on is just because I wasn't immediately good at it. And so for me, like there was a lot of like pressure on myself to say like, okay, well, I need to be perfect at everything. And I'm obviously not perfect at this all the time. So I'm just like, this isn't for me. But I think I was scared of it. I was scared of failure. But I think a large part of it is just getting over that. So if you're scared of coding, if you're like, man, I just really can't do this. This isn't for me. All that is pretty much fear. If you just sit down and try it, a lot of times you find out that you can do it, and that's something I do tell the kids a lot.
Wow,
it also helps. It also helps a lot to take a college class where you're like kind of forced to do it, right?
Right. That also helps.
Yeah. That's great. Well, Martin, maybe we should dive into Martin a little bit and talk about Martin, how you got exposed to coding in the beginning.
Right. So I have been into, I guess, not necessarily coding, but just technology in general since I was very, very young. My dad was a field service engineer, so pretty much we just went to like factories that like made like plastic molds, and what his job was to just fix those machines. And we're talking like huge, like 20, 30-ton machines. And just getting into the idea of like there is a logical process that happens, right? And every machine goes through it, and that there's a tiny computer in pretty much every like mechanical thing that occurs, right? It really got me into the idea of like getting into like technology, computers, and overall I think it just made me like very tinker heavy, like as a kid. Everything I did, I pretty much had to like take it apart and just put it back together. A lot of the things in my room right now are things that I've like taken apart. I have my own set of tools. I've been messing around with stuff for years. I actually didn't take my first like formal programming class until I was in like my senior year of high school. But everything prior to that, I was essentially self-taught. A lot of the things I own are fixed by me. And I built my own computer when I was like in high school, my sophomore year of high school. I built my own computer. So I mean, it's just been like this huge fascination I've had for years and years and years, and I haven't like exactly gotten off of it ever since. It's just something I think I've like been born to do, and that's what I've been doing. So,
what makes it so addictive?
Like honestly,
what's the feedback loop?
I think it's just the idea of like having things that are it's just kind of like the thing that like makes the most sense. I think like it's everything. I gotta like I wish I could like put it into words. Like when it comes to computers, there is really only like it'll only do what you tell it to do, right? There's no like uncertainty when it comes to computers. So when you have something so certain, you're able to figure it out. All these theories they kind of apply like universally. You know what I'm saying? Like the everything needs like power. You know what I'm saying? Or like with every like loop, it all runs the same way, and you can apply it to almost anything. Like what I learned from like putting together like my phone can honestly go towards like what comes together like in a TV or in a monitor or like literally anything. Like these are
Anything
all
with a
still
screen.
circuits.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
certainly. With a PCB and a screen and a battery and transistors
Yes,
and
absolutely.
what's behind me, right? So
Yeah. So figuring out how all these things are connected, it honestly just keeps me going. And how fascinating how things grow over time and how much better things become. It's just always been fascinating for me.
that is super cool.
Mhm.
Man, Jeff, I don't think we could have brought on two more interesting people. These are you guys are great.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, let's shift topics a little bit and let's talk about Coder
Yeah.
Kids. I'm curious to hear about kind of your experience with Coder Kids. I know that you guys have both taught quite a few classes. Martin has probably done more online stuff, and Emily did a lot of in-person classes. But I'm curious to hear from you guys, like from your perspective. How has the experience been? But maybe more importantly, like what do you think makes for a great class or a great like a great Coder Kids instructor?
You
Oh,
want to
and
go first, Em?
I don't know who I'm asking to go first. So
I can go first, just to switch out. But I guess I'll answer what makes a good class first. So I guess for any student, what makes it easiest for me and is most exciting for me is when the student like actively like finds the projects fascinating. Like there's and I try to instill that in all the kids and try to make them realize how freaking cool like coding is and how complex you can make it and how amazing that is. But some kids are receptive to that and some kids are less receptive. But I don't know, when the kids just get it, like they know like this is a hugely powerful thing and I can literally make games, I can make things that solves my math homework with this, I can do all sorts of things, and how significant that is, that makes me happy because they are on like the same wavelength as me when I get to teach them, and they really pick up on it really well because they care. But either way, I mean, I think what also makes a great instructor is a one who tries to emphasize that, and that's regardless of how much the kids accomplish. What I try to impress on them is like this is so cool. Like you can do so many things with this skill, and it's incredible that we've gotten to the point of technology that we can do this. Like, and it's just available to everyone. So I think that would be my answer.
I think that's underrated. Yeah, like the cool factor. I didn't have these opportunities, when I was in fifth grade or in middle school or even in high school, right? None of this stuff was available. I think I learned how to do like a really simple flash animation or something, but yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, the stuff that we have available to us right now, even in the crazy coronavirus year, right?
Right, yeah.
We can actually build stuff, man. I can't say amen enough. That is super cool. What do you think, Martin?
Right. So what makes a great class for me is it's a lot like what Emily said, is that it requires a lot of the interest of the actual like student in mind. So when it for me, what makes a great class is when I'm able to get them excited about something that is seemingly nominal, right? Like if we're doing a Scratch class, for example, if I tell them like, hey, this is how random numbers are generated, and if I go like on a whole rant about like how like seeding process works, and they're like understanding it and they're asking me questions, I think that really does make a great class. Just like simple things, just like like you can see their interest like peaking, and then they ask questions about things that aren't even related to the project. They're just asking questions to like make themselves better. That really does make the class better for just in general. For me as an instructor, it makes it easy because it's like I like that's the whole reason you're there, is to answer questions and to provide answers. And for me, what makes a really great instructor is genuinely trying to hone in on the reason that you're there in the first place. Like what makes you interested in computers, and trying to instill that in who you're trying to teach. So like for me,
It's perfect.
I'm very into the tinker side of just like anything, right? So when I do teach my classes, usually like in the middle point, so like on Wednesday, I say, hey guys, we're gonna make a completely different thing from scratch, and I'm just gonna like theory craft with you guys, and we're gonna make it on the spot. And the idea is that like we are pulling things out and putting new things in, trying them, seeing how they work, and at the end of the day, we have a completely brand new project that is functional, and sometimes is even better than what I had planned for the actual initial day. And so for me, that's really, really good. I do that all the time in my private lessons because I think that's even better when it's one-on-one. But yeah, absolutely. If you're able to, if you're able to tell them like, this is why I'm interested in it and this is why it matters to me, then it makes it way easier to teach and it makes it more engaging in general. And that's what I think makes a good instructor.
Wow, I think I have to agree 100%.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's interesting how, like, obviously tinkering is more accessible these days than it ever has been, and there's so many different projects and kits and things that you can get. But it is interesting in my experience in teaching Scratch classes or other classes, how a lot of kids like they have a hesitancy about diving in and just like breaking stuff, you know?
Mm.
So like if there's a
Doing
Scratch
something wrong.
project, yeah, like doing something wrong. I think it's part of our education system that kind of teaches you like you have to have the right answer. And so they're like looking for the right answer. And I think one of the things that me and James like so much about coding is that like there's not a right answer, and also like you can't ever break something to the point where it can't be fixed, or there's just so many opportunities for you to tinker and for you to play around with something. And I think that's something that's really special about coding. Would you agree with that, Martin?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think being able to like that's why I say like when we have those tinkering projects, like sometimes it'll just break on me. It's not just in Scratch; it's like in Python. Like I'll add some like weird code, and it just won't work. And then there is the frustration obviously of it, and there's the
Right.
there's the hesitancy of like, oh, I can't put this in or it'll be wrong, or or I shouldn't run this or something. But yeah, it definitely does. It makes it way easier and it makes it more rewarding, I would argue, that when the code does work, when everything does fall into place, and when you have a finished product, I think it definitely comes out as more like a I did this kind of situation rather than a yeah, we did this.
Yeah, for sure. Um,
That is
James, did
super
you?
cool. Yeah, I just want
Yeah.
to say like something that, Emily and Martin, you're really good at is lighting that fire of wanting to learn in kids. And
Yeah.
I think that's just one of the best things. And it's hard to encapsulate like how you communicate your love of something. But I think what you said, Martin, specifically about saying like this is why I care about computers and tinkering and coding. Yeah, because if we don't, if I guess as instructors we're not vulnerable about like our intentions, then it's just like, oh, you're the teacher. It's just your job to be here, and that's true. But if they know that you care about it, then they can have some emotional buy-in too, and they can see it's possible. Especially for young girls and boys that were told like maybe this wasn't their thing, but maybe they're in class because a friend is in the class and they said, hey, why don't you join me? But maybe they're not too sure. To hear those words of encouragement, to hear like, hey, you can be interested in this, it's okay to mess up, I think that gives them greater freedom that hopefully will improve their whole education, whether it's in math or writing or whatever. And
Emily, did you want to chime in?
Yeah,
I
I
saw that
mean,
you went unmuted, so I was like, oh, maybe she wants to say something.
no, I mean, I think James is absolutely right. I mean, I can relate to my personal experience. Like I kind of alluded to earlier, a lot of kids are scared to make mistakes, and I think that scares them off from a lot of stuff like this. So impressing onto them that it's okay to do that is really important.
Well, I think before we wrap up, I think we better hear from Martin about drones, because James, I didn't even know that Martin was into drones.
Yeah.
So
he is.
what did you want to talk to him about in terms of drones?
Well, whatever you want to talk about, Martin. I know that you recently got one, and I think you were building it. That's all I know. So.
Well, it wasn't that I was building it. The idea was that this is gonna be crazy to explain in such a short amount of time. But I bought a drone for a private lesson course, hoping that I would be able to hack the drone, because what drones do is they hook up to they create a Wi-Fi signal similar to how your router does. Pretty much what I was trying to do is just hack that Wi-Fi signal and send commands to the drone without using the pre-made apps for the drone. It's been done before. It's all over the hacker like network. Like it's like a thing that people do at like hacker conventions. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. It's a thing that happens at hacker conventions. So there's pretty much a guy that goes around with like his own drone, and he goes around hacking other people's drones by like making contact with the other drones. So that's like his whole
That's
thing.
terrifying.
Yes. So I bought this drone. I've tried hacking it. So it's actually way harder than I thought it would be, and I actually haven't like done it yet. Like it's not finished, but it is possible. The only thing is the drone I bought has zero documentation on it, so I have to essentially I have to like steal commands from it like via like actual hacking, like going into the network and stealing information that it takes to the controller and stuff like that. So it's gonna take a long time to actually do it, because I have to create software that steals information or steals packets. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
But right now, so majority of drones, like there's a bunch of they called R drones. They're pretty much like Arduino like slash like publicly sourced like drones. So they're pretty much like pre-built drones with like their own little board, and those have all their documentation publicly available. And so that's how that guy goes around like hacking other people's drones, is through publicly available documents that he just reroutes back.
Interesting.
But yeah. No, yeah, that's the whole thing on drones. I tried doing it for a private lesson, but then I realized that this would be a huge, massive undertaking. So we're actually moving to Discord bots that are completely programmed in JavaScript, which are.
That's great. We've got a few bots, don't we, James?
We do.
Yeah, I'm making my own bot using the Discord API and a thing called Node.js, which creates a little like connection between the two. So. Like I said, I can go on about this stuff forever. It's crazy. Obviously, this programming is what we're into. So
yeah,
that's great.
That is awesome. I guess one thing. Well, yeah, I want to hear a little bit about your experience. With this internship. I don't know how much is under an NDA, but whatever you can share with us, I'd love to know. What you're working on, Emily, and then after that, I think I want to talk about like some lightbulb moments, which could be while playing Lightbot. But yeah, Emily, what's been your experience? How's that been?
Yeah, for sure. I can tell you a little bit about the project. It's just like the specifics I can't talk about, but
you'll just have to kill me.
Yeah, well, no, but
no, she'd have to shoot you. That's how it works.
So, what the project is a Monte Carlo statistical simulation of splashdown events for the SpaceX and Boeing crew modules for NASA. So, basically, the idea is when they perhaps have an emergency and they need to cut the launch short. Or I'm also analyzing just regularly, they went out to the space station, did their mission, and are on their way back and now need to splash down in the ocean. I was tasked with analyzing, where do they land? How safe is it based on weather conditions? How long does it take for the rescue vehicles to come out and get them? And is that within safety standards? So basically, the company I worked for did a lot of safety related things for NASA. So it was attacked from that angle, just making sure everything's up to regulation, if this happens, then everything's an accepted value, and just running that simulation to verify it. So it was really cool. It was actually done in this scientific programming language called R, which is not something I've ever taught to kids because it's purely meant for scientific applications like this.
Right.
But yeah, it was extremely interesting to get to know all the parameters that went into that kind of thing, and it ended up being a huge simulation. And I actually had to implement some pretty creative programming strategies to get the runtime down. It was potentially going to be running for 17 hours to properly compile, so I had to do a lot of research and analyze a lot of things to get that runtime down to a reasonable time. So yeah, it was really interesting, and I gotta look into the inside of NASA and what that takes to make sure everything happens safely there, and all the crazy planning that goes into just one mission. So it was pretty fantastic. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Those Monte Carlo simulations are pretty neat. I have to tell you, I once ran a very basic Monte Carlo simulation in Excel, because as James knows, I was once upon a time looking into opening a nickel arcade, like an arcade
That's right.
where you use nickels for all the arcade games. And so I ran these different simulations, like, okay, well, basically, I mean, my understanding of a Monte Carlo simulation is basically you have your regular case scenarios, but then you can take the Monte Carlo and say well, what if this factor is off, or what if this factor is off? And so you're mixing and jumbling all those things to see how it affects all the other aspects of the simulation. And so, and Emily, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, the thing that's really funny is every time I'd run this simulation on Excel, very rarely would it come back and say you're gonna lose money, right? As long as you're gonna make money, you're gonna make money. And I guess it just goes to show that no one in a million years, except for a few people, I guess, but most people did not see COVID coming, because I think that would have completely demolished my simulation. So
Would have really hurt the bottom line, huh?
absolutely.
Well, yeah, and it has for a lot of places. We've been able to stay online because we've been able to pivot. But yeah, simulations are only as good as in some ways as the people building them. So it's
yeah, I mean, it's probably quite good for NASA, but there is always the unexpected, right?
Yeah. And it absolutely depends on how good your data is as well. There's plenty of assumptions I made, and stuff is still changing with each of the missions, and so it really depends on what information you're drawing on, because if you make an incorrect assumption, then it could obviously make an incorrect conclusion. So yeah, they're only good up to a certain point, because obviously the people creating them, like you said, and the data they use aren't perfect, but it is a useful tool, I think.
Yep.
Right. Well, yeah, if you guys have light bulb moments, that would be great. We do have to wrap up, but is there any moment that you had with a student and you saw their eyes light up and when they finally got something?
I guess I can talk about that.
Quiz.
Quiz. Are you
yeah,
an instructor or not?
I don't have a specific moment with one kid, but I do know that look, because a lot of times a kid will call me over and they'll say, hey, I set up the code, I think it should work, I just don't get why it's not doing what I told it to do. And so what I usually do is I walk through each step with them. I talk about what does this do, what does this do, what does this do, why is the order like this, and we go through it step by step by step, and suddenly we reach the line with the bug or whatever is wrong with it. Yeah. And they go, oh, and then they rearrange everything and it works. And they jump out of their chair sometimes. Some kids get so excited when they've been struggling for something on 20 minutes trying to get this to work, and suddenly they just change one thing and it's golden. I love those moments when the kids get so excited to see everything run.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because it's something usually really small. It's not, I think taking into account these small victories, I think just really makes people have more fun. And then the people next to them too, right? That affects the students next to them. Oh, what did you learn? Like, you know, if
Mhm.
they're making a big fuss over there, and you know, then they'll look at their screen and they'll see like, oh wait, you can do that, and then
Right.
they'll try to incorporate it in their project. So there's this cool synergistic, you know, cooperative behavior that we're trying to foster as well. And so those light bulb moments kind of, well, you know, they give off a light, and then people are also attracted to that light of that new knowledge. So
Mhm.
it's super cool.
Absolutely.
Well, I hate to cut our call short, but I know James, you have to get on another call. Do you want to let Martin?
Yeah,
Martin, you got
let's.
like you got anything? You got like
Uh,
a
Nothing specific. Honestly, it's gonna sound a lot like Emily's. There's a lot of those, like when I was teaching online. You don't really get to see that whole, like, like that physical, like, light in their eyes, or
Yeah.
whatever.
right.
It becomes a vocal thing, so you have to like kind of like assume like what they're seeing. And so
Yeah.
when, for me, the light bulb moments are when they tell me like their solution. Um so one time somebody was having an issue and we fixed it, uh like on Monday, and then on Wednesday, I was like, all right, so what do you guys think about this? He's like, oh, do we do this, this, and this? Like, he just said like his exact explanation from Monday. I was like, yes, absolutely, that was exactly what we need to do. And so, like, just like little moments like those where they draw those connections and then they literally tell you that they made that connection all of a sudden, I think that's a symbol of success, more than anything, and that they are learning. Yeah, so something went off in their head for sure.
Well, that is super awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time to, you know, sit down, do this interview. We really appreciate it. Again, Mr. Martin, Miss Emily, y'all are stellar instructors.
Thanks, you
And
guys. Good to catch up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. And until next time, well, episode 9 is going to be exciting. We're going to do a special interview with someone who spends quite a bit of time in Minecraft. We'll just leave it at that. And I'll see you next episode.
All right, see you guys. Bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.